Hi everybody. In a prior video, I made reference to a battle fought, a Revolutionary War battle fought in present day Simpsonville, South Carolina, about an hour about half an hour from where I live. I referred to it mistakenly as the Battle of Long Cane Brake. It was actually called the Battle of Great Cane Brake, and the reason it was called that was because it was fought in a bamboo grove. So the bamboo, those were the canes. Anyway, I thought I would maybe visit the area where the battle was fought, and while I do so, also give you the story of a young man who fought on the revolutionary or patriot side of the battle, but who would later go on to become a Loyalist legend. Probably the most famous or infamous Tory in South Carolina backcountry history. So come along with me, and while I enjoy the beautiful countryside here, I will give you the story, or rather the tragedy of Bloody Bill Cunningham. All right, so I got out my little selfie stick here. I thought it would be cool, just to let you guys see what I'm seeing. This is Cedar Falls Park. Nice, cool trail. I like it better than the Swamp Rabbit Trail because Swamp Rabbit Trail is really, I guess, kind of polished and paved, and this is like more rough countryside, more like what it would have looked like when Bloody Bill was around doing his thing. So William Cunningham, because he wasn't called Bloody Bill until afterwards, he was a young man when the revolution started, 19 years old, and since he kind of leaned towards the revolutionary side, he actually joined a Whig militia. Now we would call them the Patriot militia. Even though his cousin was a general in a Loyalist militia. So, but anyway, originally he was a Whig, and he was in the Whig militia. He was very well liked by everybody, very popular. He was said to be very jovial, and just an all-around good-natured guy that everyone liked. So great. But what eventually happened was he had a falling out with one of his officers. And what seems to have happened is that the militia unit that he belonged to was supposed to be moved down to the Charleston area, which is a long way from here. Even now, it's 4 hours to drive there by car. It would have seemed like a whole world away back during the time of the revolution. So he said that he wouldn't agree. He hadn't agreed to those terms of service. He claimed that he had enlisted under the express terms that he would only serve in the vicinity of where he lived, which very well may have been true. That was a very common kind of agreement back then. But anyway, so he had a falling out with his commander. I think he actually did go to Charleston anyway, Charlestown as it was called back then, and he was court-martialed for initially refusing to go, but he was later reprieved. Like I said, he was very popular, but it seems like it did get people just talking and not liking him, and made him some enemies. And so eventually it came to pass that he had a lot of people on the Whig side that didn't like him and started to get kind of hostile towards him. So in 1778, a few years into the revolution, and after having served for a couple years on the Patriot side, he eventually left and went to the environs of Savannah, which later in 1778 was in British hands. So when he did this, they actually sent people out looking for him. And some of the people that they sent out looking for him killed his brother. They actually flogged his brother to death. So a pretty terrible way to die. It's worth noting that, what is this? I don't want to go up here. No, I don't want to go up here. Sorry, I didn't want to go up there. That's where it gets paved. So his brother was actually epileptic, and probably for that reason was unable to serve in the militia, and probably wasn't very popular for that reason. So a militia officer, I can't remember who at this moment, but a Whig militia officer actually looking for William Cunningham, they actually captured or they interrogated his brother and wound up flogging him to death. So very brutal way to die. He apparently beat up his dad really bad too, who was elderly. So it kind of, and I don't doubt it, no one who tells Bloody Bill's story tells that part any different. So it's pretty sure that that actually did happen. And it goes to show just the way that your politics, it was really hard to be neutral, at least in the South during the time of the American Revolution. And if you didn't pick a side, people would pick a side for you. So that was what they did. And by this time, William Cunningham was down in the Savannah area, but there were refugees that were just pouring into Savannah, Loyalist refugees. And from one of them, ooh, like I said, it's a little rough out here. It's not well paved, not paved at all. It's a little rough. Like I said, where was I? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Okay, but one of the refugees that were streaming into Savannah at the time let him know that they had killed his brother, his disabled brother. So he didn't have a horse at the time. He was just on foot. But what he did was that he actually went on foot from Savannah up to 96 Little River area. So 96, not too far from here, but a long way to walk from Savannah. And he marched all the way from Savannah to 96 area, found the officer that had been responsible for killing his brother, and shot him in cold blood. And that was in 1778, and from that day forward, Bloody Bill was pretty much a marked man. If there was any way he could have been neutral before that, he certainly couldn't do it after that. So, but so shortly thereafter, they sent another group of people out looking for him, and they came upon his, another one of his brothers that he had, I guess. But they abused, and I'm not sure how abused, but abused the wife of his brother. And I think this was a different brother than the one that they had killed. So when they did this, by this time he had gotten together with his cousin, Patrick Cunningham, who had been the commanding officer at the Battle of the Great Cane Brake. And his cousin gave him a horse, which had a ring of white fur around its tail. So he called it Ringtail. It was became a very famous horse. But he rode back up towards the 96 area, and upon finding or spotting the officer who had abused his brother's wife, he chased him for 1.5 miles on horseback, and upon catching up with him, cut him down with his sword. So something to remember is that in these days, this really was, especially in the South and in the backcountry, the American Revolution really was almost like medieval warfare. They did have muskets and rifles. Everyone had muskets, very, very useful for self-defense, useful for hunting. People had rifles too, especially military people, and you could hit someone from 300 yards away with a rifle. Good for long range. But a lot of this was short range and fought on horseback. It's hard to shoot somebody on horseback. And so local blacksmiths made lots and lots of, little squirrel there, lots of swords. I have a friend that actually found one of these swords up in North Carolina, and it was, they thought that it was dated back to the time of the Revolution, but they were just local made swords. So the blacksmiths had to take their side too. But anyway, people fighting with swords would cut each other up real bad. You'd have people cutting each other's arms off. People would get their fingers hacked off when they'd, try and block the sword blows. So when you read about people being dismembered, I think people would fight and they would just kind of dismember each other, whether they meant to or not. But it was really violent and really bloody. So anyway, let's take a break. All right, sorry about that. I got a little turned around and I wanted to find my way, figure out where I was again. But anyway, to continue the narrative, a turning point came in the war in the South when the British captured Charleston. Definitely a big deal. At that point, they really took control of South Carolina, and all the Loyalists that had been kind of hiding or that had wrongs perpetrated on them began to come out of the woodwork and take revenge. And at this time, William Cunningham was listed as a colonel in the provincial regiment of Patrick Ferguson, who was a British officer. So it was a British unit raised for American Loyalists. So a little bit more formal. And he was in charge of about 40 men. And this is where the war really starts to heat up. He was in several battles, very successful, still a commander of cavalry horse soldiers, right? Dragoons, they were sometimes called back then. And being under the command of Ferguson, he would have been present at the Battle of Kings Mountain, where the Loyalists were roundly defeated. Okay, I'm lost again. But I thought I'd at least show you guys this because it's really cool. It's a really nice place, really beautiful. Definitely check it out if you get a chance. Sorry about that. I got lost again, and so I had to find my way again. But yeah, so the Battle of Kings Mountain, I think that's where I left off. The Loyalists were defeated at Kings Mountain, and what we now call the Patriot side, the Whig side, took all of them that weren't killed captive, including William Cunningham. Cunningham would have seen a lot of Loyalist prisoners executed, both kind of informally, and then a few days later they did a formal execution of a group of the prisoners. So he would have maybe gotten a grudge. He later escaped and made it back to British lines. He became I guess he got promoted to a major because he's later listed as a major and has a whole regiment of dragoons under him. And so he continues to be very successful. In, I think it's July or August of 1781, another turning point occurs when the British leave the backcountry of South Carolina and they retreat just back to the coastal area. That is a decisive moment, but it's important to our story also because William Cunningham and his men actually stayed in the backcountry. They didn't retreat until they were finally driven out by Andrew Pickens, who was a very famous militia general. He had Pickens County named after him. So his name kind of lives on in the landscape, as a lot of these names do. But yeah, eventually William Cunningham was forced to leave the backcountry too. Kind of the last chapter of his career is the Bloody Scout. And the Bloody Scout means the bloody expedition or the bloody raid. And what happened was William Cunningham led a group of 300 men on a foray or a raid, I guess, back into the backcountry from Charleston. So he started out with 300 men, split them into two groups. One group was under his own command. Another group was under the command of a guy whose last name was Williams. Can't remember the first name. The other group under Williams got attacked and defeated pretty badly by a revolutionary captain called Sterling Turner. Don't ask me why. It's an easy name to remember. But anyway, and yeah, apparently Sterling Turner killed somebody that that Bloody Bill knew, and he took it personally. So when Williams' defeated force reunited with the force under Cunningham's command, Cunningham was enraged that this guy that he knew had been killed, and he went to take revenge. So they chased down Sterling Turner's militia, which was only about 30 men at that time, and they caught up with them, surrounded them, and they killed all of them but two. I'm not sure why they let those two live. I think one of them escaped, and the other there was a case of mistaken identity. But anyway, all of them but two were killed, and the captain Turner apparently was beheaded. So very brutal. And another man there who had taken some kind of part in the killing of the guy that Bloody Bill Cunningham knew was tortured before he died. They actually cut off both of his hands while he was still alive, and apparently they did things to him that were too shameful to mention, was the wording that was used. So that's a contemporary account, but a secondhand account. We don't know if you really, cut off that guy's hands or whatever. But I wouldn't doubt it. And he definitely had all those people killed. So they were not taken prisoners as a rule. They let a few people go, but basically they weren't taken prisoners. And let's see. So after that, that was one of the things that he became infamous for. After that, they went to a blacksmith shop, a blacksmith who was also a Patriot captain. After having all of his horses shod by the blacksmith, he killed him and killed his son and killed his slave. So really cold thing to do for sure. Another one of his infamous incidents. And after that, probably the most infamous thing he did was it was called the Battle of Hayes Station, where they surround this group of about 20 guys and a colonel that are in a fortified log cabin. And what they did was, the guys were with their women and children there, and they were in a fortified, they called it a blockhouse, but it was really just like a log cabin that was kind of bulked up. Hey there, I'm not sure why my camera cut off there, but I'm just gonna finish the story. So yeah, anyway, Cunningham and his men surrounded this group of militiamen in a blockhouse, and they were holed up in that blockhouse with their women and children, weren't going to come out. So what Cunningham did was he actually fired a ramrod with a bit of pitch on it that was set on fire. So kind of like sending a flaming arrow to burn it down, but it was a flaming ramrod. And fired it into the roof, which set fire to the cabin. And so, of course, the militiamen had to come out. And when they came out, what he did was he separated the women and children from them, and of course, let them live. Killing women and children en masse, even, by 18th century standards, that would have been just way too brutal. So, he let the women and children live. And it appears that one man who he apparently said owed a favor, he let him live too. So that just kind of shows like the up close and personal nature of the war. But the rest they had killed, and the two commanders they had hanged at a improvised gallows. And so definitely cold-blooded killing. But you got to remember, this was done on both sides, and so this was a brutal time, to be sure. The war was definitely a brutal chapter of American history. So after that, he eventually returned to Charleston, and they chased him all the way back to Charleston. They, a Patriot militia force pursued him all the way back to the British lines. And upon arriving in Charleston, his horse gave out. According to the story, this part I don't really know if it's true, but according to the story, his horse gave out, and the horse, like I said, the famous horse Ringtail, supposedly a really fast horse that had kind of saved his ass a bunch of times, died. So they gave him a military funeral and fired a volley over his grave. And reportedly even some of the church bells rang to honor the dead horse. So I don't know if that's true, but it's an interesting story. It's kind of a funny detail, and it kind of tells you too that this guy, at least to the Loyalists, was a hero to them. All of this happened, the Bloody Scout happened after the British Army, about a month after the British Army surrendered to George Washington. So you kind of have to ask why. Why was it done? I think that's part of why he goes down in history as being especially bloody. But a lot of people who had been loyalists had lost everything. You know, they lost everything, and they saw him as maybe as their last hope, or maybe just their last retaliation against the people that had driven them away from their homes. So history is written by the victors, and it's interesting to speculate how William Cunningham would have been remembered if the other side had won. So, but anyway, according to one account, William Cunningham later escaped to Nassau. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Nassau in the Caribbean, and but died a few years later. That could have happened. He was still a pretty young man when they said that he died, but he could have died to a tropical disease that was really died because of a tropical disease that was really common. But really, I can't find any contemporary source that says that. I think that was made up later. There is, however, a very credible source from a Loyalist officer that was later ennobled by the King of England. A very rare distinction. But a very credible source said that Bloody Bill Cunningham lived out the rest of his days in England and was given a half-pay pension by the British government. So since that is the only contemporary source that says what happened to him, I think it's probably pretty credible. And I don't know. Maybe there's a grave somewhere that says William Cunningham in England, but he pretty much disappears from history at that point. But anyway, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed hiking with me. And I think I'm going to make more of these videos because I'm having fun being out in the middle of nature. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Also, I have a website where I make t-shirts. And here's a t-shirt that I made myself that's for sale on the website. I'm gonna have to use my selfie stick so I can like let people see it. Hold on. I got this selfie stick here. There it is. Okay, so this is one of the shirts that I designed. Forget your smartphone. Always a good thing to do. Of course I'm shooting this on my smartphone, so you know. But I'm too cheap to buy a camera, so there. But anyway, yeah. Check out my website where you can get cool shirts like that. I designed them all, and you know, I'll leave a link to that in the description. If you like the video, if you enjoy the video, definitely please press like or subscribe if you want to see more. And that would help me out because it'll help the YouTube, the gods of YouTube, determine that my video is worth seeing, and then more people can see it. So I would really appreciate that. Okay, so yeah, that's all. Definitely happy holidays to everybody. Hope you have a happy new year coming up. And yeah, take care.